I'm much more positive.
That's good.
It was such a positive vibe.
That's
to
good.
Use a terrible term.
Yeah.
That I feel much more positive about the whole thing.
Welcome to the LabVIEW Experiment. I'm your host, Sam Taggart from SAS Workshops. If you're a developer looking to unlock your potential and take your skills to the next level, then look no further. From freeing your imagination and experimenting with new ideas and workflows, to exploring aspects of software development you've never even considered before, I'm going to help you grow your craft so you can approach your work like an artist and have more fun with what you do. In my 15 years working with and training developers, I've helped dozens of individuals and organizations embrace a growth and learning mindset that allows us to overcome challenges and embrace failure as the essential learning experience it is. If you're ready for the philosophies, strategies, tips, and tricks that will unlock your creativity, then it's time to get to work. So I am here talking with Ltdswatts, head organizer, or I don't know if you have a title or whatever, but the mind behind GDevCon.
I'm the chair.
The chair, that's it. Yeah. I'm officially the president of GDevCon.
We're all really just board members. Chair because everyone sits on me.
Yeah. So first of all, Steve, thank you for an awesome event. It was great. You guys really set the bar very high. We have to try to figure out how to match it next year. So I quite like the venue. I thought it was great. Good, comfortable seats, nice view, very huge screen, which is something we were missing at GDevConNA. So
I loved it. I was very, very happy. I mean, my bag. And this is not talking for GDevCon. This is my bag. So a lot of the stuff I talk about is me.
Yeah.
But for me, I want to give presenters a platform. Now, my concept is, if you give presenters a platform they can be proud of, you'll get better presenters. You'll get better people presenting. You better people want to put the effort in, want to present. You get, and that's for me is the foundational idea that you can build upon.
Yeah.
And so if you lay that foundation, that's a solid foundation, and then everything else follows from that and should become easy, because if you've got great presenters that people want to see, then ticket sales,
yeah.
Yeah, no,
people are going to want to come,
then you'll make money, which then makes you we're a non-profit, very much a non-profit this year, and that gets all that money then goes to making the next
a better event. Yeah.
And for me, I think I'd already thought about this, but the word event is very interesting. It should be an event. Okay?
Not a conference, event.
Yeah, and I think people should feel that they've been at an event and not a conference.
Okay.
And again, this is only me. We have differing opinions within GDevCon about this. So I present mine that I think are right, but other people have different views and theirs are equally right. But for me, I think personally, if you line up good presentations, you could put them in a hangar and people will enjoy it. And a certain element of the audience will really love that, really enjoy it. There's other members of the audience that, just like the fact they're in an exciting city, which is fun, and then they're with their friends and they're networking and they're, and there's actually two groups, and a lot of it's to do with experience and and they kind of diversify in what they want. You'll see that it's quite a lot that they get the thing in between of it, in between the speeches. They can get, for me, I get a very rough idea what the presentation's about. I take no notes, then I chat to people, and then I build up something in my head. Then I'll go and watch the videos. And that's how I operate in a conference. And people say, why aren't you ever in any of the sessions? And that's why I try to build up a thing. I'm not a note taker. My brain doesn't work like that. You have to, and I think so. For those type of people, you go away and you have to say, "Do you remember Amsterdam?" I don't remember presentation 15 on day one. I remember Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And I remember Birmingham, and I remember, Golden. And
I think I'm more on that track.
And I think the more you go to it, you could say you're jaded. I think you tend to be like that.
Well, you've seen a lot of the presentations, and also the longer you've gone, I feel like the more you've progressed in your LabVIEW career, there's still stuff to learn, but it's more nuanced stuff, and I'm not And I've also reached the point where like in my business, I've realized like being a better LabVIEW developer is always good. And I'm always for that. But I don't need to be a better LabVIEW developer, right? I like for my business stuff, I need to work more on the business side and the networking and like that side of things. And the conversations with other business owners and stuff at these things really helps me a lot.
I'm thinking now about the presentations. I pick up things from the presentations I don't expect to pick up things. So the technical takeaway I took away most really was in a subject I'm actually not that interested in, funnily enough, on a work basis.
Yeah. Which
was all to do with branching and merging and workflows and things like that. In my opinion, I've got mine sorted. I'm happy. So it doesn't tick my box. But there was always a niggle. I was dealing with another customer, and they hired very expensive consultants, and they had an opinion on sort of how you should run a workflow, branching and merging, and it always stuck in my mind. And this wasn't in the LabVIEW. This is embedded C, and I thought, I know I like what they were saying. I knew I bought into it, but I didn't really know why. I didn't know what the good reason was. And it was essentially to do with branching but not merging if there's like one endpoint. And that all came clear just from that presentation. And you get that, so you pick up bits in strange places. So like I say, I'm not getting a hose pipe of information. I think after a while you start to pick up snippets in conversations and
Well, to me the most interesting thing was Andre's presentation and the question of like, what problem are you trying to solve? And sometimes I think we approach things from the wrong angle. Like this whole Git flow thing, like I can't quite put my finger, but I think we're approaching from the wrong angle, because I think we're saying we're like conditioned to think that like if we have X number of developers, we need to have them all working in parallel, and that's like where we get the Git flow from, because we need to manage all these people working in parallel. But I've been reading a lot about mob programming lately, and I'm wondering, like, I think it's more efficient if they all work together as opposed to working in parallel. And I really I'm very much looking for a way to prove that. Like I want to get a big customer to like hire me and just say, okay, we'll run a mob program, we'll do an experiment and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I view a merge as a management failure. I don't know. It's not a process failure. I just view it as a management failure. If you feel you have to merge other people's code.
Well, here's the other thing though.
But that's, that's an extreme position.
Here's another interesting thought though of the tail wagging the dog. We design our architectures in a way that we make it easy for people to merge later, right? Because we have everything. And I mean, I think that's actually good design. Like the fact that we make everything so modular. But are we doing that because it's good design, or are we doing that because we're making it easier to merge at the end? And like, it doesn't really matter if it's good design. I think my beef is
if a project is so big that one person can't do all the work, then that indicates to me it's more complex for what then one person can understand. And then you're saying 10 people merge into that project. How's that going to give predictable results? If you can't fully visualize it, and you're merging 10 other people's work, unless you know precisely what they've done, I just look at that and I think, I wouldn't like to manage a project like that. But I come from a very privileged position, and so I think there are ways you can do it. And I think going down to what you're saying, you modularize it into small bits, and you give those modules. I was kind of talking yesterday to it, and that thought, how do I separate my big project into little projects, is pretty much. If you say the computer industry started sort of in the 40s, 1940s, that question mark came up in probably the early 60s. And that's why we have structured programs with functions and subroutines.
Because it used to just be a bunch of assembly code and
and that's how early that idea is how, and the motivation wasn't to make these things easier to understand. They assumed software was going to be hard. The motivation was, I've got 10 people's worth of work here. How do I break my program up, give it to them to do? And we're here thinking, how's this new thing? We need to do these to get this brand new thing. And it's as old as software itself.
Well, that brings me to a very interesting point, though, about how we break up work and how we think about it. And that is, like, if you have... What is the challenge? Is the challenge the entering the code in the typing part, or the clicking part, right? In that case, like, if that's the challenge, then fine, have 10 people work in parallel because everybody can click in parallel. But if the challenge is the design aspect of it, then it makes more sense to me to add more brain power to it and to put all the people together and have them all. Because like, if you've got 5 people working on a project and they're all working on their own task, at any given time in a project, there's like one most important task. So why would you only devote one person to that and have the other 4 people working on stuff that by definition is less important? And doesn't it make sense to throw all that brain power at the most important problem?
So you're saying...
Am I thinking about that right? Because that's kind of been like circulating in my head. I'm like...
I think the trouble is, there's some projects that can work on. So user interface design. You're better to have your team putting that in. You know, because you're building up a picture together, you're building and you can use a whiteboard. And I think then you move from that to sort of execution.
Yeah, that's what Casey, I've been talking to Casey about this.
You don't want lots of people executing.
We can all execute in parallel. Like the design part should be this mob programming, and then the execution part, once you got the design, then you go and do it.
But if you design, you know, so say you want to do reporting, well, what's the interface to that? You define that. You can define that in the meeting. You can say, what's my interface? I want a report module. And the interface is, I don't know, here's my data, give me a report. So that's your 2 commands that you send to your report module, you know, and that module could be an actor, it could be a component in my view, it could be a DQMH module, it could be anything you want. But what's the interface? Well, the interface is this data, this message. Generally, that's how I like
and try to keep it as simple as possible.
Well, you define that and you write that down. You say, here's, I think we call it an ICD. It's a component spec.
From your book,
And you go, here you go. This is the spec. Go do your work. And what you've done is you've modularized something. You've got the interface, so you can now, at the top level, implement that something. But you can give it to someone to go and actually do all the hard work. And that's the parallel part, and that's how you make the parallel part work, is you split it, and they're off doing that. You don't have to worry about it, because you've got the interface, you don't have to worry when it gets delivered, particularly, as long as it's before the end of the project.
Well, that's almost like the report thing then becomes its own separate project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and that's it. You're breaking things down into, and that's how you can make multi-teams work. But it's, like I say, it's a management issue. Now this panacea I see, and I've worked in embedded projects which aren't LabVIEW. Because we all, oh God, LabVIEW is really hard, and it doesn't merge very well. Every other text-based language which is easy to merge doesn't merge very well.
I was going to say, you can still, Well, and one of the problems I see, and we were discussing this last night at the bar, you can actually get into a situation where you have, like, even though you're working in parallel, you can still have something that merges in Get, and Get says, yes, it merged, and you can still have broken code. As an example, if you got 2 developers, and developer A is working on some library, and he decides, I'm going to delete this method on this library, or this VI, right? Because he looks in his project, he sees it, nobody's calling this VI anywhere in the whole project, I'm going to delete it. But this guy over here at the same time decides, I'm going to call that VI. As far as Git's concerned, they edited different files. You go to merge that. Oh, great. We merged. Everything's great, except that this is now calling a VI that's no longer there. And your code's broken. And
but again, if the merge, the execution of the merge is really easy, changes are happening in a project so complex you can't fully do it yourself. Changes are happening that you can't predict. And you think, and everyone sort of stands around surprised that it turns into a big shit show.
Well, I think that's where you need the automated testing to catch things like that. And I think that's where also, like, I like getting the stuff merged quicker and doing the more trunk-based development, because you get that feedback quicker of like, these 2 merges, even though like Git says everything's good, I can do it and I can verify it by running tests.
I still think programmers want to use tooling instead of management.
I think that's a very deep thought, and
I'm
I very much like
I'm
it.
A deep
Well, it goes down to all problems are people problems, right? Because we think that the technology, and this is like technology-wide, this is society-wide. We think we have a problem. We think, let's just throw more technology at it, instead of trying to like introspect and look at like what role do the humans playing at? What can we as humans do differently? And
I mean, I'm comfortable with the architect hierarchy model of designing software, where you have the guy at the top who's got the big picture, doesn't necessarily, information hiding means that he doesn't necessarily need to know anything over the interface, and you have people providing interfaced modules to him. Now, doing it that way, you don't need automatic all the rest of it. You know, the testing's always good. I'm not saying you don't need testing. I think that's cool, you know, because you want to test the module.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah. But you don't need to be able to automatically merge stuff in. You actually want the architect to say, okay, this is my definition of what this module should do. Does it do it?
Yeah.
Tick in the box. Now I'm going to commit it to my repository.
Okay.
It's good.
So
or I take it from your repository and I'll commit it to my repository. You know,
yeah, I like that. I'm following what you're saying. I'm wondering, like, is that more of like a waterfall way of thinking of like you do all your design up front as opposed to like the agile way of like experimenting, and as you go along, you learn things about the problem and then your things change? Or
I don't think how you do it matters, because the interface can change. It has implications.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so the interface is not like this fixed document. It's like, this is what we're starting, this is our goal, and if you learn, if the architect says this is your interface, go design this thing, and you go design it, and you realize that the interface needs to change, then you just go back to the architect and you say, hey, you let them know, hey, I'm making this change, and then the architect.
And again, within the project, you can say, I mean, in our way of doing it, and all the other different ways, you just say, okay, this needs a new behavior. Perhaps we describe that new behavior for the same message, for example, or may need an additional message.
Yep.
And if it's got an additional message, well, that's an easy change to your interface internally. You just make that change and say, bring it in.
Yeah.
And when it's ready, just implement it like that. I don't see it massively. You know, again, managing people, a lot of people want to automate it because it's not easy.
Yeah.
You have to be technically astute. You know, the architect has to understand the reason you're writing the software, you know.
Well, I think the problem that I see, potential problem that I see with your model, and is that if the architect over specifies things, like I feel like you want it to be like good general guidance, like the interface, but then you need to stop and not specify beyond that, right? Like if you over specify, then it constrains the people who are working.
Yeah, I mean, none of these things will make somebody who's not good at their job good at their job.
Well, there is that.
But nothing else will. You know, if you automate everything, that's not going to make somebody who's not good at their job good at the job. But what it's going to do is just make it quicker for them to fail, which is not a bad thing. Yeah. You know, being quick to fail is actually possibly a really good thing. Anyway, we're supposed to talk confidence.
Well, no, but one more comment that I want to make is your thing about automating is that you have to have a process to automate first. There's a point that Jorg made that I thought was really good, like a minute process. Cool. So let's talk conferences.
Yes.
Yeah. So all right. First of all, one of the things that I always like to talk about is like how like things don't always work out the way you planned, and like if it doesn't work out, it's not necessarily a failure. It's it's a learning experience. So you guys were going to have your conference at CERN, and that ended up not working out. So what did you learn from that process? Like what's your takeaway? Or
well, you have to mitigate these things, and I think the other thing is you feel pressure to make the next conference bigger and better.
Yes,
and
that is very
because
true.
because it was CERN and we sold tickets, we felt an enormous amount of pressure to really make this one much more than Birmingham. But I really enjoyed Birmingham. I thought it was a great venue, and I liked it all. But we just thought we had to push the boat out a little bit more each time. Now so you got two problems. So because we couldn't get CERN, because after lockdown they were very in demand when it started to open up. So we just missed out. But what that left us was not very long to
plan.
So with the help of William Bars at Steven Rood, we got we got this venue. But it doesn't leave you much time, because normally you need to have the venue sorted about, well, pretty much should be talking about it immediately after this.
Yeah, I know, we were talking about it immediately like the week after the last one. We're like,
and you then have to get the deposit ready, and you then have to arrange it and get it done. So we had about 4 or 5 months to do that, and it's really hard because we weren't on site. So you sort of like catering. We don't know what the catering is going to be like. You have to do it all on spec.
Well, you don't even know what the venue is like. Like you can see pictures, but you can't actually be in it.
I mean, we have some things that we want. We want an auditorium.
Yeah, I think I would like to see us get an auditorium. I don't know if we will. I think we might go back to the same place we went to last year, but an auditorium is a very nice touch, and I very much like
I just like, I mean, again, going back to the presenters thing, I like personally to present to an auditorium. I like how
it makes it feel more like like you're on stage, like it's a bigger deal, as opposed to like I'm sitting in everybody's sitting in a flat room and
And the screen, for example,
the screen is a big thing.
Oh, I just love that.
Ours was just way too small.
And and that again, to me, even I only did my 10-minute keynote, but it was great. I just enjoyed that. And as a presenter, you feel up. It makes you feel up presenting with all of that nice stuff. It makes you feel special. And to be quite honest, presenters are special. You know, anyone who's got the guts to stand up and the strength of opinion and their own ideas and to be honest with those ideas and to give them to the world in a software's all in the head. So it's actually quite a naked fear to put everything that's in your head out to an audience of your peers. You know, it's a very primordial sort of thing to say, these are my ideas and I think they're really good ideas. Everyone could start laughing at you, you know?
That's totally.
And so you're exposing yourself intellectually quite a lot of the time. And it's you know, it's not easy. It's people think, you know, I make it look easy because I don't care anymore. But it's not easy, and it wasn't easy at the start, and people put a lot of effort in, you know, and so we should celebrate that, and that's my perspective. It's not the only perspective, you know. There's the other perspectives really are. It's all about the material. You know, give people a platform for material, and that's great as well, you know, because I like that perspective as well. But really, my foundational thing is everything should be about making a presenter think, what a great stage, I really desperately want to put shitloads of work in to make my next presentation that much better.
So can we talk about something that you and I have talked about a lot, and I know your opinions on, but I want to get it on the record because I think it's a really interesting take. Imposter syndrome. Yeah. We've had this conversation.
Well, I've talked about it a lot, actually. There's a purity to how I work, which is transactional. And it's purely, and I can't remember how many times I've said this actually this week, not weekend, but this event, is that you tell people what you're going to do. I tell them how much it's going to cost and how much time. I either fail or succeed in delivering that. I get paid. And I don't see it personally any room for imposter syndrome in that relationship, because if you're an imposter, you wouldn't get paid. So it's quite, you know. So I wonder. I just wonder if it's an accurate statement about how people feel, because people can feel inadequate, you know. And life does that to you, you know. There's a million things that can make you feel inadequate, and maybe you're imposing that on your work. But the work side of it is, if you do that transactional thing, I don't understand where there's room for imposter syndrome.
Like, are you delivering solutions that actually work? And if they work and they meet the customer's requirements, then what's there to be an imposter about, right? Like you've done the work.
So I mean, that's me. I mean, so you can think, okay, I'm now going to go off and do something different. You know, I don't know. I'm going to go and make food for someone professionally, or do a picture. And then if that's your first picture, you can feel insecure about that. But again, I don't see that as being imposter syndrome personally, because you are an imposter at that point.
You haven't done it,
Because you are. So you should just be realistic and say, look, I'm learning what I'm doing here.
So it's okay to be in that learning phase. Exactly, and acknowledge that you're in the learning phase. And
going back to the whole point of your podcast is that's the point you can fail, and it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, to the things like I went up and when I gave my first presentation, it was on test-driven development, but I had an example of like, hey, I did this, and I was very honest, like I'm learning as I'm going. And I remember Christian getting up there and basically doing like the code review, like, here's something I wrote, I have no idea if this is good or bad. What do you guys think? That was like the ultimate of like, you talk about like putting yourself out there. And vulnerable. He was like totally vulnerable. He's like,
it is. And to do that, you have to have a certain amount of confidence. You have to say, so I've observed it my last permanent job was kind of I used to use it as a bit of an experimental thing, and I used to use it to build a lot of ideas, and it was very interesting because I was a single point of test for about 20 mechanical engineers, so their designs would come through me to be tested. And it was very interesting to see the different levels and quality of their products, because it was flat. You know, there was 20 engineers, you get their product. Mm-hmm. And the ones that were really good were the guys who said, I don't know anything about this. Can you help me? Help me define the test for this.
Yeah.
The ones that were bad were ones that used to sit there and never talk to anyone and just give you their product. And again, it was having the confidence to say, I don't know something, without feeling insecure.
It's like a confidence and humility and like separating yourself from the work and the result. Like,
yeah,
because
it wasn't lazy.
Like my worth is not tied up in this, so I can. And also, it goes to one of your things about like being able to throw stuff away, right, and not being too attached to things, and taking really small steps. Came up with talking to Jorg and Stefan. Like, you take these small steps and you experiment, you try something. If it doesn't work, it's okay. You throw it away. You move on. You try something else.
Well, and the deeper part of my keynote, which, you know, in a keynote you get 10 minutes and most of it's thanking people, but the deeper part of the keynote, which I would like eventually to explore a bit more, is the foundation to self-confidence is knowing that you're really good at something. It doesn't have to be everything.
Yes.
Just be good at something. I know, see, I'm self-confident because I know within the niche world of software, I'm really good at one thing, and that's making things simple.
Yeah.
So that's my superpower. I am always the least qualified person in the room. Always. Because I don't have a degree. Yeah. And I'm in a room full of degree engineers, you know, and I worked in a factory. That was how I learned. So I know, you know, there could be a lot of room there for imposter syndrome, but because of the transactional nature, and I know I have this thing that I'm good at. I don't care about the things I'm bad at. It's an acceptance. You can't be good at everything. And, you know, and if you know that you're not good at everything, the things you're not good at, you can ask people. Yeah. You know, be good at asking people. That's a good start. You know, and so that's what I wanted to build, is if you can find the one thing you're good at, that'll build your confidence. And then if you've got good confidence, it will make you a better engineer. Because you'll talk to people confidently. Everything won't be just sapping my ego, you know. And so it's like I say, my 10-minute presentation has quite a deep foundation in directions I quite like people to go, and I'd like to see. I personally really like to see much more self-confidence in the software engineering world. You know, we're a bit meek, to be brutally honest, and we're a bit accepting of being told that we're not valuable, and I'm not. No. I'm not a believer in that.
No, I like that, Steve. That's a very good thought to leave things on. I would love to keep talking and dive deeper, but we're running out of time, so I think we'll leave it there, because that'll give people plenty of things to think about. So,
cool, positive note as well to finish with.
Yeah, very positive. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. Thank you so much for organizing GDevCon and helping us out and inspiring us over at GDevConNA. You were like a huge help in getting that off the ground, and so
thank you. It's been really good.
That. We love you guys. We think you're awesome. You should all come over to Boulder someday.
Next year, I'm coming over. I'll make a commitment. I'm coming over next year.
Awesome.
I'm gonna do it.
No.
Unless of course I deeply fail and everything goes terribly wrong. But if
I want to help you make that happen in any way possible. So
no, that'd be grand. And you guys, so it was always the plan. We always expected to have a lot of money in the bank. So we would have to, being a non-profit, we had to try and make a lot of money in the bank, because we thought we would have to seed GDevCons in other parts of the world, and hopefully there's something going to happen in Australia for Chris.
And there's also somebody talking about Latin America, so
even better.
Enrique,
So
I'm putting him on the spot right now. I'm calling him out.
And you guys are doing it. We don't need to do it. So I mean, we've pretty much wound back all of our financial aims now. And it allows us to go bigger and better in the venues. As a non-profit, now we can pour the money back into the venues. We don't have to stash it into seed money for other people. So it's just wonderful that it's self-generating. I just love it. I think it's great.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Woohoo. That's it for today's episode of the LabVIEW Experiment. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments or questions, head over to thelabviewexperiment.com and drop me a note. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the LV Experiment so you never miss an episode. And remember, small steps and quick feedback are all you need. Catch you next time.
You guys are good to go.
We're ready to go? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
A drink. The only thing I haven't done is get us a drink.